I'll be a little closer because that may be necessary. Okay, that sounds pretty good right there. Can you hear me at the back? Okay, everybody put in their hearing aids. Come on.
That's, I guess I could do it.
That's the best we're gonna do. So you should move up. If you can't hear, you should move up a bit. The speakers are just up here. We have limits on the sound system. So please move forward if it's harder for you to hear back there. I don't know how to do that in hand signals, so.
Got it full.
Welcome everyone to BC Townhall's 2024. My name is Lynn and I am part of a volunteer group made up of people just like you, except I'm standing up here and you're sitting out there. That's the only difference. What is the purpose of BC Townhalls 2024? Our purpose is to hold town halls across the province. Why? To provide information and to get people talking face to face. We are nonpartisan, non-political, and we are not associated with any other organization. It's great to see so many of you here today. Our speakers have lots of information to share. You'll have opportunities to ask questions at the end of the program. Before we get started, I'd like to do a little exercise. Could everyone just stand up for a moment?
Yes.
Now, if you could just turn to somebody that you do not know and say, happy to see you. Now that's how we get the conversations going. Thank you. Now we're ready to start the evening. Thank you for everyone for being here. Every single one of you here is important, and you all have a voice. I'd like to introduce you to our moderator for this evening. And Kelly has been a moderator at several town halls in the past, and he does a wonderful job. So I'd like to welcome Kelly.
There we go.
Well, I'd like to thank Dave for all his work on sound, trying to get this going.
Yeah.
And he's excellent as a janitor as well. Well, we're wonderfully pleased to have you all here. At the same time, we've invited a lot of people to be here from the North Cowichan Council, from Duncan, from Lake Cowichan, all these different places. However, a lot of those have not chosen to come to tell us what bills are going through and how it applies to them. So unfortunately, we have some very qualified people. We're happy to have them here to inform us. Now, I also like to welcome the RCMP members that are undercover. I'd like to say I was invited here. I'm not breaking and entering this time. It's all good. We have done these before, as Lynn said, and we had quite a turnout in Victoria. It was very good. What we found was that I just want to ask you to make sure you do one thing. If you're going to ask a question after, make your question succinct. We had one person who wanted to go on a whole speech for 10 minutes. And we had to say, please ask your question. And you wouldn't guess it, but this person was a politician. So we need to know that you're safe here. If you're too hot, there are doors we can open, but that's about as close as we get to air conditioning. Otherwise, the washrooms are out through that door back there. And, oh, and also right up here. Seem to recall that last time. So if you need those facilities, it's fine. We will have a question period at the end. If anybody needs a notepad, they're all on the seats. And if you would like to tip anybody, Adriana's right here.
We'll collect.
Oh, we'll collect,
We'll collect questions.
shake them down on the way out is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
collecting questions.
We want of that. We do have a couple of videos to present because from people that could not be here. In Victoria, we had the mayor from Oak Bay who had to give his video presentation because he was trying hard and couldn't get there. We had the mayor of View Royal, and he did a fabulous job, as well as Jan Webb and other councillors. We were just thrilled with the turnout of the politicians that were there, which was really good. Unfortunately, trying to get everybody here was just not happening as well as we'd hoped to, but we do have good information. So with that, I would like to start. Any other details? No, Adriana's looking away, that's good. So,
Adriana mentioned that they'll be collecting questions, not money.
oh, now there's clarification. Adriana says she wants to collect
Oh,
questions, not money, slip her a fine. So the papers that are there, write down your questions so that we can,
Put your hand up and I'll pick them up for you.
okay. We've got somebody who's gonna pickpocket. No, pick papers, just back there. And we'll be able to get questions gathered so that we can start to sort them through and give you a good concise thing. It's easy to go too long, so let's try and make it concise. So the first person we'd like to have up today is Marina. I won't even say her last name because she always gives me this little smirk, right? Ozikov. And she's been a medical doctor here for over 7 years. She's been in Israel for many years, where she was the head of a hospital. There's so many things she's done in such a short time, but her heart is for helping us understand and doing something. She's actually running as a candidate this year. So we ask you to come now and give us your take on Bill 36.
Okay. Oh, she doesn't want that. So, you know what? Can you hear me? Can you hear me without the mic? Okay, I'll just talk. Okay, so they will just make all their preparations. They spent about an hour preparing, and now in the last minute we find out that it still needs some tweaking. Okay, here we go. So I got involved with this movement of people that were eager to find out what's going on quite a few years ago, and Brian is the one to blame. And then things that started going all right for us for quite a while, and then they started developing, and we started being assaulted from pretty much every direction. And as much as Lynn is trying to keep it apolitical, what I'm trying to say that I was very much apolitical when I started reading about all these things and learning about these things. And actually all this brought me into politics. I always thought that politics is a dirty business, but it's probably many of us as well. But unfortunately, to get things straight, you need to get your hands dirty. And this is what I'm doing right now. So I will be speaking as a doctor, and I will say at the end few words as a candidate for Conservative Party of BC. So I would like to start with the Bill 36. And I'll start with the notion that I found out about Bill 36 not from my licensing college, not from the government, not from the media. I actually found from people that were concerned enough, that got enough information and came to my clinic and handed out pamphlets. This is how the information about this bill started leaking out. That speaks to a larger issue of transparency of our government. It's a much bigger issue. It took almost a year for the news to slowly leak out about the HPOA, and even today, many people are still unaware about this act and its implications from the practice of medicine in BC. Just to mention another fact about myself, that largely because of this bill, I retired from practicing medicine 2 months ago, And this is what I'm doing right now, bringing information to people and knocking on doors and talking to people about this issue as well as many others. So this is our situation in BC during the last several years. And when information even comes from CBC, we pretty much have to say that must be hard to hide. So the situation in BC is getting dire for patients and healthcare providers. So these are all CBC articles. So the situation has been in the making for a very long time. Shortage of doctors, you all know that, because if we are not healthcare providers in this province, we are all patients. It's frozen. Okay, let's try this. Okay, so let's just, okay, so it's frozen. Do you want to kick in? Joe?
Yeah, if you want me to swap over to it, I can.
Let's just do that because. So I'll just keep talking. So let's just talk about how this bill was passed. And it was passed in a very interesting way, which the important thing that when it was passed, it was one of the first bills that was passed in this way. But later on, we noticed that many other bills that had pretty much the same or even more serious implication to our everyday life are actually being passed in the same way. So Bill 36 was passed in November, just before Christmas in 2022. Then the Christmas started, then nobody knew about it, and this is how it's slowly getting through. Now it has been implemented a year later. It received the royal assent, and now it actually has been implemented in by the colleges. So when I saw the college connector about this bill came into my email, I said, "That's it. That's time for me to get out of it." So now, okay, Dave says it's working.
Oh.
It's so it doesn't. So
Joe,
okay.
change the story to the projector. Yeah.
So let's just see, the reason that I want you to see those slides, because those slides are quotations from the bill. So you know that it is not a hyperbole that I'm saying, it is just as serious as this bill says. One other piece of information about how this bill was passed. This bill is one of the largest bills that were passed by the legislature of BC, and it has more than 600 sessions. So only a third of those sessions were discussed, and 400 were not discussed. And I actually had I could not believe it when I actually heard about this for the first time, and I asked one of the MLAs whether the actually legislators know what is in this bill, because I could not believe that even people that make it a law, that it's our duty as citizens to abide by, they don't know themselves what is in the bill. That's a scandal. So by the way, you know about Bill 44, probably many of you. Somebody will be talking about this bill as well, and this bill was not discussed because they involved the closure. So these are all the articles that we see from the media, and this one I can specifically speak about that 60% of British Columbians don't have a doctor or find it difficult access. When I was still working here in Mill Bay, I was seeing patients that would come from Saanich and Souk And I felt so bad, and I apologizing to those people that I had to travel all this way, and they were actually grateful that they were able to see a doctor. So now they gave more money to doctors, but in parallel with giving more money to doctors, they actually increased the paperwork to the point that doctors cannot see the same number of patients. He's a political science bachelor, and he is running our healthcare into the ground. As you can see, he is the only one who thinks that province is moving in the right direction. So that's we're doing much better. And please don't believe your lying eyes. So if Time Colonist tells you that politicians are out of touch with the on healthcare, you probably see that it is true. So we spoke about this one. So this is the bill itself. So this is what it looks like, and the Honorable Adrian Dix has signed this bill. So as I said, it was barely debated, and they don't know, the politicians themselves, the lawmakers themselves don't know what is in the law. So here's the first notion about this bill. We used to have 15, 16 colleges in this province, some count up to 19, and these colleges were independent, each one for every specialty. It covered every aspect, every field of healthcare separately. Now, as the purported goal of this bill is to streamline healthcare in our province, I don't know what it means, but they decided that to put these colleges together, and out of 15 to 19 colleges, by different estimations, we only are going to have 6. So this probably not the most egregious part of it, because as we go, things get more serious. And this is where serious situation starts. As you can see, every slide shows which specific sections say what we show on the slide. So as I said, it is not hyperbole. So advisory boards of the colleges now will consist only from government appointees. Professionals are not going to be sitting on advisory boards. So this is a very serious issue. They created an office of superintendent, and this is medical health provider, medical care providers lost their independence and self-governance. So the professionals on the boards are going to be replaced with government bureaucrats. So BC practitioners have to follow guidelines set by provincial political appointees. So this is how medicine is going to be practiced. Historically and practically, over the history of medicine, probably since the Hippocrates, the guidelines were based on the best evidence and expert opinion. After this bill was passed, the health guidelines will be set by political appointees. So, and this is the term that probably many of us have been hearing and are hearing now every day, is false or misleading information. So, and this act uses these terms. It doesn't define them, because that would be too much of a clarity that we probably not deserve to know. So whatever the government calls disinformation, and you know that in the last years, pretty much everything that our government disagreed with was called disinformation or misinformation, and misinformation actually is. Past, when we had the COVID lockdowns and we were disagreeing with them, we were able to protest.
So now that these things are inserted into the law, although the legislator, they don't know what is actually in the law, we have to abide by this law and we'll lose our right to protest. And it can be used arbitrarily against any independent professional opinion. So, yeah, that was the articles article in Enclave the Net, which confirms what I just said. So if you think that this is absurd, it is not. It is section 513, 14 and 518. For spreading misleading information, doctors can be fined up to $200,000 personally, or $500,000 if incorporated, and they can be imprisoned. So that will make every doctor have a pause before we decide to advise a patient what the patient needs to know. And we are talking about medicine. And many of you here know that medicine is not precise science. And doctors are humans. And actually they have a right even to make a mistake. But now they can't make a mistake. They can make a mistake when it comes to medicine, but they definitely cannot afford to make a mistake when it comes to government instructions. So, and they can, so the problem with this, that actually it undermines the very core of doctor-patient relationship. Because when patients know that doctor sits there in front of them and actually cannot say what he or she wants to say or has to say, they would wonder what else they are not saying. So in this case, it's a very difficult for patients to have informed decision or make informed consent or make very important health-related decisions because they listen to a doctor who just try to remember what was the government instructions were for the last last while, out of fear to lose their license. So this is getting worse as we go. So apprentices chosen by politicians may now enter healthcare practice, seize patients' records, and restrict access to that facility without court order. So these sections violate privacy of the patient records. And Mr. Dix says that it is not true, but he is going in the same interview to explain that it's good that it's happening. That's another beauty. As you probably know, in normal times, any anonymous letters or anonymous complaints were mainly disregarded and ignored. Now, anonymous complaint to the college, it depends on the decision of the advisory board, whether they want to ignore it or they just can investigate it. But it can result in a summary suspension of a license even before the complaint is investigated. So far you probably can understand this. And again, you probably thought, you know what, they let us be, and they're not mandating vaccines anymore, by the way, for health professionals, they still do. And probably we can just relax and sit and take a breath. No, they just, meanwhile, while we were trying to take a breath and think that maybe we just have a win because we protested, we expressed our opinion, we disagreed, maybe we won. No, we didn't, because now it's quietly inserted into the law and you cannot protest it anymore because you will be criminalized. You're breaking the law. So you probably know that Conservative Party, member of which I am, advocates and supports rehiring all the unvaccinated healthcare providers that were fired during the COVID. And eventually, we created so much noise that Premier Eby had to respond. So his response was, I wonder if somebody watched this video because it's quite, I would say it's quite funny. He was talking, we specifically were talking about rehiring people who refused to get vaccinated because they used their right to their bodily autonomy. So we specifically were talking about vaccinations against COVID. So he gave us a lengthy tirade, very teary, talking about measles outbreak in Quebec and a couple cases of measles in British Columbia. And he was using this argument to oppose our proposition to rehire healthcare providers that were not vaccinated against COVID. So that's, and I would like to remind people here, I don't know how many of you still know about it, we are still the only jurisdiction by now in the world, the only jurisdiction in the world that healthcare providers are still under mandate. I have a friend who is an orthopedic surgeon, so he renewed his license in Alberta, and he's flying to Alberta to do surgeries. So instead of working here within a dire situation, in a crisis, that's how we treat our healthcare providers. And we know probably, I know since 2021 that the first reports started to appear that COVID vaccine or COVID shot does absolutely nothing, zero, to prevent transmission. And then there was a very famous interview with the CEO of the Pfizer for EU that she said that these shots were not even tested for preventing transmission. And this is, we have a science of this thing. So this is very very serious sections that Paul here feels very passionate about it. I feel passionate about all of it. So it's sections 335 and 533. That Cabinet and the Ministry of Health can adopt as law in BC. Just give me a second. Yeah. Can adopt as law in BC any regulations, code or standards enacted in foreign jurisdictions and international borders, which we're talking about officer who is Bonnie Henry right now, and a few unelected bureaucrats to make dramatic changes in this act, which will represent a law for the whole province. It will not require consultation with public or professionals. So this is other areas where Canada already struggles with the foreign interference, and now this will be the next one. This bill takes it a step further. So you're probably familiar with this one. And now, one thing that I would like to say, after all this presentation, that as far as I'm concerned, it sounds pretty scary. It is definitely undemocratic because it undermines very core principles for bodily autonomy. It takes freedom from medical health professionals to express their honest professional opinion. They lose their freedom of speech. It passed undemocratically without wide consultation with the public, and now it advocates this bill, or it introduces that it undermines the sovereignty of the province in making its own medical decisions. So this is what the bill HPOA, what the HPOA really mean. I'll just spell it. HPOA stands for Health Professions and Occupations Act. We used to call it Bill 36, but since it passed, it became an act. So the government now fully controls healthcare providers. They lost their independence and self-governance. Your private records can be accessed and can be seized, and the privacy is lost, whatever the government has to tell you. The government can adopt foreign rules without consultation with the public or healthcare professionals. And obviously, the HPOA will affect the access for doctors because doctors are quietly retiring. Doctors and nurses, and I'm not talking about the ones who already disappeared from the province after they were fired. They're people slowly learning about the contents of the Bill 36, and they're just quietly retiring because they can't sit there and worry about every word and see if it complies with the government flavor of the month. So yeah, hospital departments will continue to close and treatments will be delayed. So I would like to say about a few words about several other bills that create a pattern of undemocratic situation with the lawmaking in this province. We're talking about Bill 31. It's the Emergency Act, which pretty much gives government very wide authority to do pretty much anything they want to approve. It doesn't define emergency very well. Okay. There is a Bill 44 that uses the word must not. The local council must not hold public meetings, public discussions or public debate. So now we have Bill 21, and if somebody doesn't know what Bill 21 means, I really urge you to educate yourself, because this bill will remove independence of the lawyers. So far, so it essentially stops the separation of powers in this province. Because right now, if you have a dispute with the government, you can hire a lawyer. It's probably not easy and expensive, but you still have this right and this ability. If Bill 21 is passed, the lawyers are up in arms about it. Actually, they threaten to sue the government if they pass Bill 21. So what they call it a single regulator. So the lawyers will lose their independence. So all these bills with all other practical things that they propose, each one of them has several clauses that specifically infringes on our rights and freedoms. There is one thing I would like to say, and now I'm talking as a candidate for provincial party. We can hear about all these scary things that are happening with these laws, and now we just leave, and now we say, what do we do about it? So this is exactly what we do about it. We can't fight the government as an underground. We have to get in the open and fight them in their own field. And this is what we're doing. There is many people like me, several doctors, lawyers, farmers, and others that stepped up and ran for BC Conservative Party. The reason is I didn't even know that I was conservative until I read their policies. And when I read that Conservative Party opposes Bill 36 and is going to repeal it if it becomes government, when I read that BC Conservative Party seeks to amend Bill 31 and define emergency properly, that gives me hope, and that gives me backing that I actually can speak about these things, and we can actually do something about these things. And that's pretty much. Just one last thing. That's so people do not know their true color, but they started to learn, and they are learning fast. The power starts with being informed, and this is what we're doing here. We're informing you, giving you power, and we need to connect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina. Marina's going to have to leave. She has some family matters to take care of. Really thank you for coming here and taking time out of the way to help us understand more. Everybody has an opinion on something, but if you're not informed, you have nothing to form an opinion on. One of the lines I ask people in a democratic society, otherwise we know nothing, we just have opinions, and you know what they say about opinions. There's another thing I heard when I was in engineering, and that was that the 9 most hated words were, "We're further from the government and we're here to help." And you might have heard it yourself. Ronald Reagan used that line and stole that joke from me. But the truth is, we need to be informed. We need to be able to make choices. And as Marina is showing us, legislation is in place that we need to know more about so that our choices will be possible. When you have no choice, that's a different type. It's not democratic. It's more of, I can't remember what my grandfather from Poland said it was, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. So the next person we'd like to have up is another healthcare practitioner, Jan Webb, and she has graduated from the University of Victoria. She's been in every hospital and every possible occupation, and we're so glad they let you out today. But there's so much that she has qualifications for to see, like from the acute care to surgical to psychiatric care, all these different things. And I'm glad she's here, if nothing else, just for me. You know, keep me in line. Jan, would you please come and share with us?
Can everybody hear me at the back? Yeah. Oh, short people. All right, well, thank you for the introduction, and I'm so glad to see so many people here. How many are here getting information for the first time? Oh, quite a few hands, okay. Are you liking what you're hearing? So you don't have to like it, but are you liking the information that you're getting?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to try and be brief. I could talk for hours about the situation with our healthcare. And I just like to welcome you all and give you credit for looking into things yourself, wanting to be educated yourself and not just take somebody else's word for it. And I hope you feel the same about me. On the back table, all of the references for what I'm going to talk about are here, all the links. So you can take this home, this little sheet, and look things up yourself. Listen to some of the testimonies from the National Citizens Inquiry. They're waving at the back, and share with your neighbors and friends. I just want to address that a little bit. You may know the last 4 years have been incredibly difficult for many people. You don't have to hold your hand up, but you can if you want to. If you know of someone who has lost a business, lost their livelihood, had relationships break up, overdoses or suicides, and just in general, the loss of income and the loss of hope. That has affected so many people. It's been a wicked 4 years. And we just want to see some changes. I'm so pleased to hear Marina running to take action. That's what they're doing. I'm a fired nurse. As I mentioned, I've worked many different areas of healthcare, and I want to cover a little bit about what the impact has been to our healthcare system, why important elements of informed consent were overlooked, and thirdly, the questionable, curious relationship that the British Columbia Nurses Union has with, I hate to say it, the NDP, the New Democratic Party that is currently in government. It's time we started questioning and asking some questions. So I chose to defer getting the research from Alberta, actually, that showed the recovery rate was 97 to 99.97%. This is within the first few months after this pandemic started. So I did not particularly feel at risk. I'm a healthy person, and most people would recover. So the Lancet published an article. This was in 2021. Before I get into that, this is the Pfizer report that under court order was ordered in the spring of 2021. So we knew that it was not 100% safe and effective. Some people were not at all bothered by the injections. Other people suffered mild reactions, and other people severe, and some, in fact, to death. So it's not to scare anybody, but when Pfizer came out with their report and we realized this injection was not 100% safe and effective, we tried to tell all of the Ministry of Health. We tried to share new information, new science that had come out from international experts. The Pfizer report is one, and certainly the Lancet, because by 2021, in late 2021, before the mandates, we knew that they would neither stop transmission nor contraction of this flu virus. So in August of 2021 is when the mandates became effective, and that's when we really started wondering, what is the point when they're not doing what a normal vaccine would do? So what was the outcome? I was going to show you, this is the study that comes from the Lancet, saying natural immunity is as good as or better than the injections. So what happened anyway? The outcome of this exposure to the healthcare professionals was not the loss of 2,500 healthcare professionals, as was published by Adrian Dix and the government, but closer to 7,000 to 10,000.
Yeah.
Because they didn't count in the casuals or the part-times, which are a huge part of our healthcare system, for vacation relief and sick relief, etc. So what happened to these nurses that were fired? They lost their pensions. They lost all sick leave. They lost seniority, and finally the federal government refused to grant them employment insurance. So many of them, again, have lost their homes. I know one nurse living on Goldstream Avenue in her RV. What is the fate of nurses currently? We cannot practice without receiving the 2 primary shots, which are now 3 years old and outdated, and a booster shot. So what happens to the student nurses? For the first time, we have actually spaces in our nursing education system. This is the first time I've seen it in decades, because they also have to have their 2 primary shots and a booster to even enter nurses training. So this is definitely going to affect us, maybe not immediately, although we're seeing the immediate effects, but we will see it even more in about 5 to 10 years down the road as the colleges have declined their enrollment. So I just want to finish quickly, if I can. Just a little bit about informed consent, and then I'll go on to the BCNU, British Columbia Nurses Union, and the government. But I wanted to say informed consent. None of us ever had informed consent about these injections. If you went into the hospital in emergency or on the units, the vials, that multi-dose vial, and they were from various batches, but we would always open a new medication. We're required by law to know what we're giving and give it safely. The insert inside the package telling you the route, the dose, the side effects, the time to give it, et cetera, all the information was blank. There was nothing on the inside. So we had no information to give anyone. And so to me, that's just a huge breach ethically of health law. And that comes from, just going to say, the health law, it's the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control of British Columbia. Chapter 2 is very clear about helping people be aware of the risks and benefits of any medical treatment or medication. That is the law. And that was ignored. So the last point I'm going to talk about, bringing it all together. So what happened now to the fired nurses that were terminated? There are about 37,000 RNs, LPNs, and registered psych nurses in the province within the British Columbia Nurses Union. Going through the union is our only legal way that we can be represented. You can't go to a lawyer and ask him to represent us. We must go through the union. The union has failed to provide representation for those terminated nurses who chose bodily autonomy and informed consent. For 2.5 years, we were completely ignored over the government. And one determined nurse has worked through all the channels, and we now have a labor relations person to represent us in arbitration. This was supposed to happen on March 20th. How many of you know what happened? The union canceled the arbitration hearing indefinitely. So again, 2.5 years have gone by for these nurses to be unable to work in any healthcare setting in British Columbia, whether it be a clinic, a hospital, community. So that's still an issue. So our only option now is to raise public awareness, and the public is our best defense. And you can help us this way. We need public support by sending emails to our labor relations representative. So on the little flyer, you'll find this little flyer at the back if you want to, and would like to support us. This is how you contact our labor person that's representing us with the union. Because if the public speaks out, we want to put pressure on, they don't like exposure. So we're hoping that as you become more aware of what's going on, you'll take action too, because it affects all of us. So a little bit about unions are considered nonprofit, and therefore they have no liabilities. They can access funds for grants, recruiting, and pay 0 taxes. I'll try and keep this quick. BCNU has several accounts which could not be verified by KPMG auditors due to underreporting and vague reporting. Normally, BCNU has about $60 million in the account, which is paid by members, and it is to cover insurance, to cover all kinds of things that affect BCNU members. This is the interesting part, and I'm going to leave you to come to your own conclusions. In the memorandum in the spring of 2023, and this is public knowledge, the current government gave $100 million of taxpayer dollars in 2022 to be, but that never happened. The nurses retiring fund received $500 per retiree, and no one knows where the rest of the money is. But worse than that, they also were promised $250 in the 23-24 year, annual fiscal year, increasing to $300 million the year after that and ongoing. Now, tell me, what is the BC government doing, taking taxpayer money and investing it in a union? One thing that was very suspicious, that was very hard to find this information, there's estimated to be over $850 million now in these various holdings by BCNU. One of which is called the Health Sciences Association. It is made up of government appointed positions. These positions are held by one sitting MLA and 5 other NDP candidates. I'm going to say candidates, they're not in government, so they are bureaucratic positions. And they make regular political contributions to the NDP. There's no oversight or active investigations currently going on to address why this is not questioned as a major conflict of interest. Yeah. So that is something, as you look at your candidates in the upcoming election, they may not know anything about this, but I'll tell you, the ones, the NDP and Adrian Dix will certainly know about it. So please see the full detailed report. There's a link by a fraud analyst. I'll give his initials LA. I don't want to expose him to any repercussions. And the link is on the reference page as well. So again, I thank you for your attention, and I hope that some of this information is helpful to you. I'm hoping that you will take action as the public and help these fire nurses. It would give a lot of consolation to know that the public supports us and they are willing to take a stand and express that. It's your healthcare system. We want to see it return to ethical standards with integrity, return it to the doctor-patient relationship or the relationship you have with your nurse practitioner. You are an individual and all of your healthcare is important, and it should be individual and in your best interest, not a one-size-fits-all. And we just want to return it to that. So I thank you very much for listening. Thanks to Lynn Paul.
Very much. I heard Janet give a presentation once before, and it was shocking when you hear about how many people are not available for the medical system. And I'm really hoping when the people nominate me for the main program that there won't be any doctors available. Now I'd like to welcome.
We do home visits.
Yeah, we're not gonna run that video because we're well behind. So I would just like to state that we had a counselor here locally that tried to bring forward a motion that council sends a letter to the province requesting for the nurses to come back to work, or but what happened is another counselor said that he felt it was in the BC union, BC nurses unions, it was their job to try to fight for the nurses. So I really, really hope people will go back and actually write to these people. Thank you. We won't run that other, so we're gonna move on to Bill 44.
What's that video? The mayor's.
Thank you. So we do have, as was mentioned by Marina, the Bill 44 issues, and I worked with 2 mayors. Mayor down in Victoria when we did this, and it was amazing to me how it's going to affect the community. So we have 2 video presentations, and then we'll have a slide presentation. So we'll just set up for those now, please.
Cutting down more than 5. These two while they're setting up.
So.
Question.
I've heard of it all. It's
Thanks. So my name's David Pink, and I've lived in this beautiful Cowichan Valley for 55 years. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background information about Bill 44 while they're setting up the videos. So Bill 44, along with Bills 46 and 47, are legislative measures that mark a significant transfer of power from local politicians to provincial politicians. How many of you out here have ever been involved in input or whatever in an official community plan? Okay, well, there are no more official community plans. It's just like local, like they just in the local area, but they're just going to be exterminated by this whole process of what they're doing. Changes to the Municipality Act have made it illegal for a municipality to hold public hearings in many residential development projects. And I'm just going to read a little bit about, if you haven't seen Westford Independent newspaper, there is some issues, issue number 9, which talk extensively, there's 4 pages about these bills. So within Local Government Act, the council traditionally had the option to permit public input on developments in their respective areas. After consultation with North Cowichan's legislative department, it is revealed that the province had quietly changed the Local Government Act to disallow public hearings for buildings within growth centers. These bills mandate municipalities to endorse 3 or 4 units on a single family lot, which of course, to try and get a second family unit on a lot up until now was almost impossible. They just like never would play ball with anybody. So and circumventing public hearings. The majority of North Cowichan residents meet the 4-unit criteria. So will your property assessment now reflect what could potentially be placed on your property? These bills eliminate almost all parking requirements, asserting that the active transport within the 15-minute city negates the needs for cars. Bill 44 compels local governments to amend zoning bylaws to accommodate secondary suites and missing middle unit housing. I think that's pretty well it. And all this is because there's a supposed housing shortage. So I went back and I did some research, and in the 1980s and 1990s, on average, our immigration policy nationally was 325 to 375,000 people per year moving to our country. Since the start of the pandemic, more than 4 million people have moved to Canada. So surely somebody has to be able to equate that to a housing shortage. But you're not even allowed to have that conversation. You try and have that conversation publicly, and you're called a racist and blah, blah, blah. It just goes on and on and on about how crazy it is. So the other thing I'm going to share with you is that the existing provincial government is bringing in, it's an election. I know people don't get involved in local politics very much, and they don't really get much more involved in provincial politics. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a politician. I never will be. My wife said she would divorce me if I ever got into it. But I'm now standing here politically motivated, not for any particular party. We need to get off our butts and stand tall for our community and for our province to say enough is enough is enough. This is bullshit.
Is to address housing happening at the provincial government, but that have the very real risk of eroding our democratic structures in a way that I think has some potential very negative long-term impacts. And I preface this by acknowledging that democracies are amazing, but they're fragile, and they take a lot of work to keep going. Democracies require the trust of the people that we serve, and we build and structure our organizations in a way to earn and keep that trust. Things like accountability, transparency, rule of law. Without that trust, we just can't survive. And I see these threatened with the new legislation. We do tend to take democracy for granted. It seems easy when you're in it, but it's not. We look at the Remembrance Day that just happened and our forebears who fought and died for the values and principles and the life that we have here. We can't let this go without at least recognizing the impact that this is happening. And the structures that we have really do strengthen our weakness, our democracy. And I say this as well, I love local government. I think it's really an exemplary model for democracy. It was set up through the provincial government legislation in a way that is almost an idealized version of democracy, but it's done for specific reasons, and it's lasted for decades in very high functioning fashion for that reason. We're closest to the people that we serve, we're nonpartisan, we're transparent. I just want to give a few examples. I think people don't necessarily understand how municipal government differs from our provincial and federal counterparts. For instance, the public is able to view all of the same information and advice provided to council at the same time that we receive it. When our agendas come out, all the correspondence, all the staff reports, all the information is equally shared with both the public and the council. We are the same. Nothing happens behind closed doors. Our meetings are all open to the public. We can't run deficits, so all of our accounting has to meet with generally accepted accounting principles and is reported annually and is therefore tied to our priorities and accountability. We have public input on almost all of our agenda items, and in fact, the public can even come and speak to us about issues that aren't even on the agenda but are of public interest. We are required to have equitable access and input from the public on matters. So, in fact, there's been court cases that have thrown out decisions that have been made when a public hearing didn't allow for everybody to be fully heard from. So these are embedded in the structures that we have. And I think the last but definitely not least is the fact that we are all at a council table obligated to have an open mind. So we have to come to the council table listening, ready to listen, and that really tends to lead to a more consensus or at least compromise-driven decision-making. And this actually makes a lot of sense when you look at what we do. Most of our decisions are land use type decisions or supportive of that. So they typically 90 or even 100-year or longer impact. And when you're making those kind of decisions, it's really important to have all of the information possible available to you, all of the facts, so that when you're making that decision, you're making it with eyes wide open of the pros, the cons, the risks, the opportunities. It ensures that all of the decisions are being made on the same information. So we're not having 7 people with 7 different information sources. We all have the same information, and it prevents that secret influence that can happen. And it ensures clear delineation between professional staff advice, advisory bodies that might have a linear, specific knowledge base, the public, which may have a historical or more localized knowledge, and then of course council themselves, which have to take all of those sources of information and make decisions and be held accountable. So it's a very robust and intentionally designed through provincial legislation model of democracy. And it's being eroded. So just 1 year ago, there was an election at the municipal level. 161 municipalities, councillors, mayors went out and talked to their communities, developed priorities and policies, and were elected to enact that vision for their communities. Those votes lose much of their value with this new legislation. The visions and the priorities that were put forward by those councils are essentially being set aside as public hearings are forbidden, and the decisions that we want from the priorities are being pushed aside in behind the provincial priorities. And I do note that history teaches us, this is always seems legitimate at the time. Oh, there's a crisis, we have to speed things up. But this is when rollbacks of democratic principles happen, and I think we have to be on the guard, on the lookout for it. And I believe this is one of those moments, the inflections in time, where we have to say, no, this is not the right, what we're losing is not worth what we're gaining. Because housing is a crisis, no doubt, but so is climate change, so is the overdose epidemic, so is the healthcare crisis and more. And while democratic approaches can slow these changes, I disagree that an entire level of government should be so gutted in the name of a crisis response. And in this case, particularly when local governments have actually been really proactive, positive partners, we've been seeking provincial assistance to address the housing crisis. So what's happened? Over the last 2 weeks, the province has enacted a series of legislative changes that require changes to zoning and oversight, which strips powers from local government and really lets the development community have the primary say in the future community. We've even moved from requiring public input and having words around that effect, essentially banning it until all of these changes are enacted. It unfortunately also downloads an enormous amount of cost as all of these changes are being passed on to the local governments to enact, all of which take work and time that we're going to set aside other priorities. It is a blanket, very cookie cutter approach, tackling all municipalities to increase all densities by 4 to 6 times what it is right now. But most critically, no input is allowed on these changes until after they've been enacted.
To a community happen when there are no changes, like when the government makes the choices and you do not get the choices. And this is what he explained. I'll take this. What he explained was how they were trying to make decisions around the housing complex. There was no commitment to having upgrades and infrastructure for the whole surrounding area when they put in a multiplex unit. And so parking, water, sewer, all these things coming into play, but locals had zero say in what could be allowed or not be allowed. And so they would be able to, especially in the case of a housing emergency, choose what they wanted to do and enforce. You had to pay in your community for the changes that would be implemented. And so you may have a bunch of, and this was where he himself was getting feedback from the people in that community. A developer wanted to put something up at the end of the street, but there'd be no more allotted parking. There'd be a lot of the changes that are happening in the legislation around what is being mandated. In regard, if you've heard about the 15-minute cities, they're looking to get rid of cars in the area. And so public transit would be upgraded. There's all these things that would have to be covered by local community. And because cars were not allowed, everybody was going to have to drive a truck. So, I think motorcycles would be good, but bicycles, but they don't mind bicycles, but they don't want you to drive on the sidewalks with a motorcycle. I don't understand that part.
What a tractor.
A tractor, I have a tractor too. But all these things are being mandated in a way that, I saw these little tracks when I was a young person, and it was talking about God's plan for your life. And it said, God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life. You're going to hell. And it was a bit of a joke. But that was, sometimes we see what is happening here, what this mayor is telling us, and what the mayor of Oak Bay that was previously presented. They're telling us that the province has a wonderful plan for your life and you won't have any choice. And so that may be hell for you, especially if they put in a multiplex at the end of your little dead end street and suddenly you're overrun with parking and noise and other kinds of things. So the plans being made are no longer your Oak Bay, Mr. Tobias said, city that we want to live in. But BC is leading the way in autocracy, in just saying this is what is best and we will do what is best. So in one sense, we are the proving ground for everything that's going to happen eventually across Canada. But we're a proving ground because we have an NDP government who is in league with the Liberal or federal government. So these are the things that trickle down. I do wish we had someone here from the NDP, someone here from the Liberal Party, somebody here to tell us the other side of the story, because we do need to hear that. And it's difficult for us to get that information unless we go searching through it. And Marina gave us, exactly paragraphs and codes and where to get things. We can read it for ourselves. The biggest question that I found at the previous town hall that we had was, what do we do now? And the first and most important thing we have to do, because I think that question needs to be taken up, and we need to start asking that after we've done some research, we need to start asking each other what that is. Start to talk to our neighbors about it. That's a really hard decision, a really hard conversation to be had sometimes. And I've had it with a bunch of people. And here's the thing that rides behind everything is that basically we want to believe that everything is being done for our good. And we will just go along with that. So this town hall here is to be able to present something that just gives you the basic information. The decision of what happens with it will be up to you. Will you talk to people about it? Adriana and Joe have come up with things where they started, because of the running for office in the last election, they started a newspaper called the Western Independent. And it's to get the information out there about what's going on. So they chose some action and it's having some reaching, you know. So I'm not trying to just tell on what she's doing, but I just need to say actions need to come. And so your action to talk to people, your action to get involved with existing organizations, and your action to actually do the research. I know they say that's not a good thing, do your own research. That makes you a conspiracy theorist. But it's important to find out when you need to know where your information comes from. Now, one of the things Mayor Tobias said was talking about how there's so many different facets of community that this will affect. And we have a person here today, I have not met her, but Cheryl Howard is here, and she is very involved in the community and helping with the homeless, with addiction, with cancer, with all of these different things. And I asked her now to come and present her understanding what we need to know regarding these bills. Street disorder is what, thank you. Okay. Okay.
I have to get out of this light.
You go line up here.
To get out of your light.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, great.
A little closer.
Okay, I'm a little bit at disadvantage here because I just arrived. I don't know what happened before me. So that's. We're the ones and others who are out there too, that you're praying for would make connection with the people on the street that are dying every day. When you hear an ambulance, what do? I pray. It's very serious. It's a humanitarian crisis. And I'm really not sure what the government has in store because they're way, way behind. They're too late. I don't know if it's purposeful, but it's not rocket science how to help these people. So we're about solutions. Every community needs a treatment center. That's not a brainer. That's just logic. We need our own treatment center here. So we're helping people on a daily basis, people that are caught in addiction. We can't really help the homeless at this point, but we feel very called to come alongside the people that are caught, trapped in addiction, disconnected from their families, their friends, from life, from community, from their jobs, from their future, from everything. And the drugs are so bad since COVID, they started making the drugs here now. So you notice that they look like they're zombies on elephant tranquilizers, horse tranquilizers, benzodiazepines. Some of these drugs you can't get off easily. You can die getting off benzos. And Narcan doesn't do anything for those drugs. It's a very, very serious situation. Do you know how many detox centers are on Vancouver Island? 2. One in Nanaimo, one in Victoria. Do you know how hard it is to get in on them? Why we don't work with them? Because it's a broken system. It was very disappointing to have like 20 ladies lined up through our ministry on the street to go to, excuse me, I got gravel in my throat, but to go to Nanaimo, Clearview, and they have to wait 6 weeks. By the time it's their time to go, you can't find them, or they're further entrenched, or they're gone. And how long do they offer these people? 7 days detox. Who can detox off these drugs in 7 days? Anybody here been in addiction? Impossible. So what do? They give them more drugs like Dilaudid, hydromorphine, other drugs, methadone. I've been talking to some of the addiction doctors, and their thought is, oh, they'll be on methadone for the rest of their life. So now they'll die from methadone, because it basically the heart fails. And yeah, some are on methadone for 20, 30 years. What's happening in the medical system when people get in an injury and they're in pain, they're on methadone or the Oxycontin, it's the candy on the street now. So I don't understand. I was trying to help somebody the other day. He was on street drugs, but pharmaceuticals were provided for him daily. It was Oxycontin, it was methadone, and Cadian. All 3 of those plus the street drugs. I couldn't believe it. Why anybody would prescribe something like that. So it's kind of like you either, good people do nothing and evil prospers, or you do something. So ours is a grassroots level of caring about what we see on the street and wanting to get out there and find out what's really going on by talking to the people in addiction when they have their few hours a day that they can actually talk and they're not worried about getting their next drugs or coming off, and finding out that they don't have medical help really. I mean, there are people out still using drugs to get them off drugs and go through. How many times have you gone through detox and rehab? 7 times it takes. So what has to happen is we need longer term recovery for these people. And we need someone to start with them and finish with them. You can't do your 1 week part and then leave them back on the street, because where else are they going to go? There's nowhere else for them to go. Nobody's looking at it from their viewpoint. Is if you're going to help them, you have to help them from the beginning to the very end. So we developed our own initiative. People who were in the nursing, the healthcare that left because of mandates are now working with us. So we have a team of about 29, 30 people. We had a dinner the other night celebrating recovery of 4 ladies that went through our women's detox program. And so we've got professionals, we're all retired, pretty much retired volunteers. We're volunteers, we're not an organization under a charity, because then the government will interfere. It's time to build some parallel situations, because the system's broken. I'm not going to spend all my time trying to fix the system. It's run by people that don't seem to understand. So we just decided we would do our own detoxing, buy trailers, put people in the trailers, and rent a house for women. And to date, we've had in 5 months, 4 women come through, and they are all recovered from street drugs. Now, they're not recovered from the addiction, but they are recovered from off-street drugs, and each of them are working, but it's recovery is still a year. And these people have all gone through detox and rehab many times, but we figured out that if you stay with them at the beginning and keep staying with them all the way through till they can get reestablished with their families and to work, that's the only way it's going to stop that cycle of guilt and shame and worthlessness, hopelessness, and loneliness they struggle with. And because they're losing their minds out there on these drugs, they really can't figure it out. They can't figure the system out, neither can I, even with the right mind. So the other thing is we started buying trailers, and I don't know if there's anyone here for the municipality or the district, but it's illegal to have people live on your property in a trailer. If I wanted my mother to live in a trailer or a family member, it's $1,000 a day fine. So we started putting trailers on a farm and putting mostly guys in them. And so far we have about probably a 60% success rate, because trailers are not the perfect scenario when you're trying to detox people, but it sure keeps them out of town, 3 hours walking from town. So that's a really big thing right there. They can't easily get back. But we have people today, we celebrated 2 nights ago a dinner with some of the guys that are recovered. We still have some over in rehab and they're doing really well. So I feel like better to do something than nothing, and one life is worth it. We put tons and tons of energy and money and time. Right now, we're looking for another house. We're looking for men's recovery homes, sober homes for women and men, because they want help. We can do it. Now, I'm a health coach, so we're doing this naturally. So how do you detox people naturally? Well, you find out what drugs they're on, and you taper it right down to one drug, and then you taper them off that drug. And they are following a health regime. So we help them body, soul, spirit. We help them to be safe, secure, to be loved, have lots of attention, not to be lonely, to be on lots of healthy foods. We do juicing and smoothies, fruit and vegetables and soup, and we do all the vitamin therapy. We know when they come off the street, they're deficient, their hormones are off balance, they have full of parasites, full of things creeping and crawling in their bodies, full of sores, wounds. And so it takes a tremendous amount of healing, but you can't get doctors, you can't even get them to, they can't sit in a waiting room for 5-6 hours, or, it's impossible. Come in and you can get access to everything you need. You just come in and it's a place where, okay, I need this help, this help. So that's what they're there for. It's called Connect. They also have 24/7 supervision of all their belongings fenced, so they can go and get all their jobs done without having their stuff stolen continually, because Life on Wheels provides things for them to survive on the street. We don't actually feed them, we give them home baking, but coffee and tea and water, but we don't actually give them meals, but they get that already from the wonderful churches and the food basket. But what we do try to do is we try to meet their needs for dignity. And many of them need healthcare, so we do a lot of health first aid with them. Quite often they'll go to the hospital, they're out the same day, and it's tough for them to actually get help. Honestly, it is, and it's a priority. It's your children and the future generation, and it's getting worse. And we see that, it's illegal for us to put people in trailers, but if I have to break the law to save lives, then I will do that. Because sometimes I think people in leadership don't have the best interest for the community, for the people, for what's happening. It doesn't take rocket science to know what crisis is happening across this nation, mostly on the West Coast and the Maritimes, and BC's the worst, and Victoria and Vancouver, and I would say Duncan, with our amount of people that live here, we probably have the worst situation. And just remember, most addiction is not on the street, it's in the homes. You don't see how many people are using cocaine and crack cocaine and alcohol. There's a lot of addiction in the homes. We're only seeing a part of it. I'd say we have hundreds. Comox has about 200. I'd say we have 400 to 500 or more that are on the street, plus all the ones in the homes that aren't getting help. So what we do is we offer 3 days a week for people to connect with us, and we try to get them some dignity by getting back their ID, getting them back to connect with their families. We offer a Saturday program. We're going to start again in September for parents who don't know how to deal with their children in addiction. So we offer them some really good teaching support and videos that they watch in a workbook that helps them to learn how to keep their love on without enabling, because enabling really just prolongs the pain for everybody. It messes your own life up when you're trying to help the children. So we offer that. We offer the 3 days on the street to connect with every single person who wants help. They can come to us. And we either get them in a trailer when we can. We've had a women's house, which we now cannot rent because the landlord took it over. So now we are looking for a home, and we have quite a few women who are very excited about coming in. It's scary though to detox. When you're on these drugs, they're very afraid that they could, once they get off, that they could relapse and die. This is a huge problem. So that's why you have to stay with them from beginning to end. The system is broken when you've got 6 weeks wait to go into 1 week of detox and you're still on drugs, you're back on the street, you wait for rehab, it's 3 to 6 months, and rehabs are 2 months, you're back on the street, you start all over again. That's crazy. Doesn't work. And OPS, harm reduction, well, all I can say is the clients that went there, all 3 of mine that had to go there, they all each one of them ended up going to the wrong room. You got a choice, room A or room B, use drugs or wait for the doctor. And they usually go to room B because they're still in that stage where, it's really hard. And so they relapse and then they end up in the ambulance. And I've had 3 end up in the ambulance at OPS, go to the hospital. And so I tried to go in with them. They don't want me in there with them. They don't want me representing. They don't want parents representing kids in their schools. They don't want us representing. I can't talk to them unless, like even parents. So this whole confidentiality thing has gotten way out of whack, and so I am concerned about that. And even the money from the ministry for shelter, I don't dare to talk about this, but this has been hard for us. We spend a ton of money renting a home, caring for it, taking ladies in, and the ministry gives them the money to give to us. You give an addict money, that's common. And then we have to fight tooth and nail. Oh, well, I had it, but it's gone now. And, you can spend 2 months looking after someone and never see the rent money. You don't have the heart to put them back out. So that happens over and over again. And I talked to the ministry about it. Why are you doing that? Well, we have, yes, the way we do it, I'm just saying that's crazy. You're not helping. Do you think I can find drug testing kits anywhere? I'll go all over to the different drugstores and I can't find drug testing kits. That's really helpful for people that are trying to help, especially if you're an employer for work and stuff, having drug testing kits. Get drug testing kits and they want to charge $13 a kit. That's for one person, one use. But you can get all the harm reduction, all the free 4 drugs, fentanyl, heroin, crystal meth, and cocaine. You get those 2.5 milligrams of those, you get those free. And all the other things that go with it, the pipes and all that, you get it all free. But you can't get drug testing kits free. The system is not for solutions. And I feel that solutions is we need a treatment center here. We need the money to be funneled here instead of, I live way out of town and I got the worst roads on River Bottom Road. I don't know if you know River Bottom, it's the worst roads and our taxes are going up. And I'm really mad about that because I would rather my tax, if they're going to go up, put it into a treatment center. And what about the hospital? What's going to happen to that hospital? That could be a perfect treatment center. There's no talk about that. So I'm a practical person, I'm a farmer, I'm having trouble even getting my chickens to lay eggs that are fertile, my turkeys. I don't know what's going on. I have horses and they don't have flies on them anymore. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's a whole bunch of things happening here that the people in charge are ignoring. And so all I want to say is that we have an organization that is really all grassroots, organic, it's volunteers, and if you want to help at all, Life on Wheels is over Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 12 o'clock to 3. It's people that are really full of compassion for people on the street, but we are learning how to help them have solutions, see them detox, see them get free, see them get back to their families. And we give tools to the families as well to help them to deal with loved ones. So I'm not sure if I have any more minutes, but that's probably enough.
I know that we were talking about solutions, we kind of skipped ahead there, but I don't know if you can bring it back up, Joe, just you know, the nurses were asking you to please write the nurses unions with the address back there. There is a petition, but I think that mayor started to help repeal Bill 44, and we didn't really get into even more of the details of your neighborhood and how you have to have a 4-plex and a 6-plex, but I did write about it. And that specific edition is edition 9, and it's on the table. So I wrote about Bill 31, 44, and 36, so that you can get a more in-depth, because we're running behind. And so I'm not actually going to delve deeply into Bill 31. You can just read about it. I actually thought it was interesting when I pull up my browser and you just type in Bill 31 or whatever you're searching for. AI now comes up with this like quick synopsis of what it was. And this, oddly, the AI seemed to be quite like on point. It said BC Bill 30. Disaster Management Act is a piece of legislation, Emergency Programs Act. The purpose of this bill includes preparing for and mitigating emergencies, managing provincial emergencies, providing a framework for emergencies and disaster management. However, the bill has faced criticism from various sources. Some concerns raised include the potential for government overreach, procedural fairness, rule of law, and democratic principles. Critics argue that the bill has loopholes to bypass chartered rights, criminalize non-compliance, enlist services without pay, and seize personal properties without due process for guarantee or fair remittance. Additionally, the bill has been criticized for not offering sufficient relief or tangible change for those affected by the emergencies. It does not facilitate quicker recovery for those displaced from their homes, and it leaves the existing gaps of disaster financial assistance and compensation. So the Emergency Act that was used during COVID was actually not ever meant to be used. I have the original booklet, and it was never to be used for a virus. So somehow they used it anyway. But that was not, it's basically, it was made for things you would think, like a wildfire in the interior, or things like that you would definitely need to call them for. But they decided that they're going to repeal that, and they're going to add all these new definitions into this new thing. And I think that it's really, it wraps up everything we've already talked about today. Bill 44, the province taking over, Bill 36, the province taking over, and how these are all going to interconnect, like Marina was saying about, you know, protesting. Well, I'll just give you a few of the words, and I'll let you read the rest on your own. This is what they've added into for the definition of emergency. This is new: rioting, a security threat, which isn't defined, it's new, terrorist activity, a prescribed incident, which there is no definition for a prescribed incident, that's new. The inclusion of a health crisis and subjective terms like security threats, prescribed innocence, of which there, for both of these, are no definitions. When we saw that they, you know, may be able to just say that you're a security threat, without any, like, there's nothing to, I went through the entire bill, there's nowhere that it describes what that security threat is. This raises concerns about the potential for broad interpretation and application. And the word emergency means now includes a state that is the result of any of the following: an event that has occurred, an ongoing, or that it appears imminent. So this thing, and also is caused by one or more incidents, whether or not those incidents occur in the same location or at the same time, of an accident, fire, explosion, technical failure, rioting, security threat, terrorist activity. So the meanings there were pretty worrisome. But they go on to say, you know, what these events are: a prescribed event, or the presence of, or the presence or suspected presence of a prescribed circumstance could be considered an emergency. I passed that by my policy lawyer friend, and she said it was she actually used to do this for a living. It's purposely made to be vague like that. No one knows what the presence of a prescribed circumstance is. So as I said, because we're running behind, I am not going to go through the rest of it. It is in there. And I'll just introduce myself that after I ran for council and I started to delve into all the OCPs and legislation and things that were going on locally, I realized the provincial was very hard to touch on, but the local policies really matter. And council's not used to people coming to council. So accountability project and council basically every single meeting, Duncan once in a while, CBRD, and we upload the videos so that people can see what's going on in their local communities. People have no idea, like you wouldn't believe what they're passing behind your back that you do not know about. So we try to summarize it for people because people are working so hard trying to feed their family. You don't have time to just keep up with what's going on. So we started that with YouTube videos on the coap.ca website, but then we realized, there's a lot of people that still like tangible news, like newspapers, and I'm kind of like one of those people. So then we started the Westford Independent, and it was basically just to try to help people understand that so much legislation is going on every single month at these local councils that you should really be aware of, and hopefully maybe show up once in a while too, if you can make it. I know that the CBRD purposely has their meetings at 1:30 in the afternoon when most people are working. So we wanted to try to bring together, like the reason like Cheryl's here, there's actually people from another group here who are dealing with the other side of that addiction, which is the destruction of the areas around their businesses. And so they're working on that. And what we're trying to do is all of us different groups, and actually there's people here from land keepers who started up their fight to help the farmers when they were shutting off their water and flooding the estuary. So there's all these different really active, amazing people now that were never here before. And so we kind of decided we'd come together. We don't have the website up, but it was, we bought the domain name. It was just going to be takebackcowichan.ca. And it would just be an area for you, if you're interested in what Cleanup V9L group does. They're the ones that are dealing with a lot of the issues around the businesses and the destruction of neighborhoods. Go to them and go and see if you can volunteer, or if you want to volunteer for Cheryl's, thing, volunteer for her, or land keepers, or us. There's a lot of people that are active. We just need more people active right now, and we're trying to make it easy for you to be active. So thank you so much. That's all I personally have to say. And so we have any questions about any of the bills?
I only had one question that was posted, which might raise others, but I see a hand going up back there because you want to donate money. All right. Did I miss that? Thank you for getting them out. I'll have to read these down there. I'm going to ask Jan Webb if she'll come, please, and see what she can do on answering this question. And the question is, can you estimate the percentage of doctors who are leaving BC and or retiring?
Marina would be better at doing this. She captures numbers so well. I will try and let you know, as of 2 months ago, the HPOA Act is legislation, it's passed. What they don't have yet in place are what they call the regulations. In other words, the forces necessary legally to go and with a questionable doctor, go and read their practice for patient records. They don't have enforce an online monitoring system, or if a complaint comes in, it goes to the college then, so the superintendent can decide if they're going to prosecute this doctor, remove a license. So it's still very vague. We don't understand the terms exactly that they have. One thing I do know that I can speak to is a good friend. One of the chief surgeon anyway, of the surgical team at one of the hospitals, because he chose not to get vaccinated. His wife is expecting a baby and yada yada. So he withdrew, and so he is at the process now. He's already applied for an Alberta practicing license, because of course in Alberta there's no requirement for mandates. They're more than happy to take any healthcare professional. They have a Come to Alberta program where you can be given $5,000 for your moving expenses. So it's looking pretty attractive. And this is what's happening for our family practitioners or even our specialists. They are already taking measures. We were technically losing about 2 family doctors per day. They are trying to import foreign doctors from various locations, the UK, Germany, and Nigeria. And I think, I don't know how you feel, those people belong in their own countries looking after their own people. We're poaching, doing that, and with huge incentives financially for them to come here. So anyway, maybe I'm answering your question in a long way, but just to let you know that most of our GPs have already taken steps. If they haven't left already, they are in the process before these regulations are put into place. So they can exit quickly. So I'm sorry if that doesn't answer everybody's questions. I think there's about 10,000 GPs in the province of BC, or there were, but we have about, I think it's just over between 7,000 and 8,000 now. And again, as of 2 months ago, on average, there were 2 leaving the province every day.
So there is a question here for Jan. It says we were told and convinced that the vaccine was the only way to survive COVID. How do we trust that they haven't been necessary? How do we have trust?
Oh, that's a tough one for me to answer. I, as a nurse, we basically looked at the biomedical model of nursing, which is for many generations been pharmaceutically based, right? Allopathic medicine, such as Chinese herbalism and all that stuff, was completely shut down. No one in acute care was ever trained with those skills, and yet I think they're very important. So trusting the pharmaceutical companies, well, there's a lot coming out now. In my own experience, again, I'm going back to when we heard 100% safe and effective. That was actually a marketing slogan. I was never promised by the pharmaceutical companies. And our governments knew that when they signed the contract for the vaccines. So if we go back to historical vaccines, like childhood vaccines, in the 1950s, there were 5. Now, with all of the vaccines for children 6 months and above, by the time they're 18, they will have had 70 injections, some of them boosters, but 70. So I'm not sure what to say. I promote natural products, support your own immune system the best way you can. There are about 5% of pharmaceuticals that are necessary. They do help people. And I won't go into them because they're big, long names, etc. But I myself, I'm very reluctant to get a flu shot or any other kind of booster at this point in time. So I'm a little biased.
We have another question here related to the doctors and nurses. Where are you going to get the heat now, sister? As doctors and nurses and other healthcare practitioners continue to leave the province because of the HPOC, is this going to lead to an increase in remote and automated healthcare consultation? Yeah, so our government must know that providers are and will continue to leap, and this moving towards consulting with bots and AI.
It seems to be the trend. I can tell you that there are some AI, one I know of anyway, used by one of our specialists, that when he does consultations, he uses an AI model that will transcribe in 2 minutes what his entire consultation for that client will be. So he's very enthused about the use of AI. It's for stenography, for keeping records. He checks them all to make sure they're accurate. But again, you know, maybe like I'm a conspiracy theorist, I don't know. I need a t-shirt that says, I need a new t-shirt because all my conspiracy theories are coming true. But anyway, I think that there is a place for AI, but it needs protection, and we don't have the regulations in place yet to provide that protection. I do see there's a lot more telephone prescribing. As an old school nurse, I'm sorry, but we took a head to toe assessment just meeting somebody. We needed to see the color of the fingernails, their lips, their pallor, their expression. I want to see that restored because I think that's the only way that you can give effective treatment and support people where they are. That's the other thing that I find if you're not asking questions and being really interested, and people have to know you care before they care what you're going to say. So if you, especially as a healthcare professional, if you are brushed off or I think it's time to say something if you feel neglected or nobody's hearing your full story. When you go in a clinic these days, oftentimes the doctor says you get one problem. You're allowed one problem. And most of our seniors have many problems or very intertwined problems. You have to know the full story. So as to whether we're going to go that route or not, I think be very careful, be very watchful. And again, you know, the excuse that a telephone consult is as good as going into the office and seeing a doctor. You can insist on it. Take control of your own health. And if you think you need attention, you say, I need an appointment. Those are your best words.
I'll be really quick. How does rehab for a handful help the masses? Well, residents fight to protect their property and feel safe in their town. We need a larger solution with it as the community is getting tired of growing out of control. Okay, my personal opinion is pretty harsh. I don't feel they have the will anymore to make the right decision when they're in deep addiction. I feel they are destroying the community. It is hurting our younger generation. It's hurting themselves. When you see someone trying to commit suicide, they get put in the psych ward, right? Because they're harming. These people are self-harming all the time. Many of them now are overdosing 5-6 times. It's now taking 9 Narcans to bring one person back, right? So this isn't going to stop. I do believe when I look at other countries, they don't have homeless, they don't have addiction on the street. To use open, you know, so they're looking at that. Treat addiction differently. And I don't know what's going on, but I do feel that it's almost an assignment against wiping out our young people. And because to me, it's obvious that nobody should be able to use drugs openly on the street. It is open, it's legalized. It is sick and sad what our government's doing. And so I feel that it should be with non-consent, that if you're using openly and you're stealing for your habit from all these businesses around and they're shutting their doors because they can't stay open, and that's happening everywhere. Only big places like Walmart can survive that, even though they can walk out with TVs. I personally feel they should be forced to go into rehab.
Yes.
My personal opinion, it can be done properly. But every community is gonna need treatment centers, and it's gonna be like, now that'll put something back in the hands of the bylaw officers and the policemen, because it's really humiliating for them to watch this happening. It's really harsh for them. And it's dangerous for anybody working on the street now. You wouldn't believe the stories that happen to people, because if you're on methadone or these things, and they can still take drugs. You know, you can be on Sublocade and still take drugs, like it's a joke. So I don't think the system is giving them more drugs, or this 1 week detox doesn't work, the 2 month treatment doesn't work. Our system is showing that it works to do long-term and stay with them all the way. And the only way to do that is open up treatment centers and make it illegal in your community to be homeless on the street and to be using drugs openly. It should be illegal. Well, in the United States, the governors, we have a corrupt provincial government, EB, you know, he has no idea what he's doing. Maybe he does, but I just feel that the only way to do it is to get out there and demonstrate. OPS is not an answer at all. And the drug addiction doctors in 1 week had 4 quit. And, you know, like they know that the drugs they're giving are killing people too. They don't want to be doing, I believe, but you make a lot of money giving out drugs. You make a lot of money as a pharmacist too, giving out Oxycontin and all these drugs. Because I go there with these addicts to get their things, their medicines. And I know how much money is behind the scenes for these things. You know, they should not be getting Oxycontin. That's crazy when they're on all these drugs. It's freely given. And they sell them to buy the drugs they want, and their doctors are writing out huge prescriptions for things. And I'm not sure who to blame there, but all I know is the system has to stop. It's corrupt, it's wrong, and the community is gonna suffer for it. And those people will die if something's not done. So I say it's gonna take something very strong to demonstrate, and that's just my feeling. And I've already expressed it at different places to the higher powers. The other question is the government trying to kill addicts with their safe supply? And I say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd like to add to that, because I'm always at council, that our local councillors, this is another area that the province has taken over. The safe injection site was put in against a federal bill, which states that your local council and business owners are supposed to approve of a safe injection site put in. When that was put in, council was against it. And there was 300 people protesting in the street, which is a lot for Duncan. And Island Health in the province rammed it through anyway. These supposed transition houses are actually wet houses, so people can do drugs in them. And they die a lot more in those houses, because when you do drugs alone, it's a lot worse than in a group of people. And so what they've done with those is that they did the same thing to council. They said, we're putting them in. Means that you don't have voice, because your voice is with not transition houses, because when I speak to people that have gone through rehab, they will not go near those places. Can you imagine just going through detox rehab and then you go into a place where someone's smoking crack across the hallway from you? So they won't go in there. It's not for them. None of this is for them. So I did want to offer some other solutions. I'm not sure I can help you find it, Joe, but I did send also the there's a private members bill, which is in this month's edition of the paper. I think it's page 3, like right when you open it. And what's happening with the children is that because of the BC Infants Act, children are allowed to do whatever the hell they want, and the parents have no say over it. And so there's parents that have come to this one MLA, BC United MLA, and they said, one of the moms said, if people would have listened to me, my son would be alive. He was 14 years old. And what happened is that she kept reaching out for help, but because he said no, then they said, you have no choice. And so at some point we have to realize that a person who is addicted, whether they be a child or an adult, they're not in their right mind. So why are we treating them like they're in their right minds, that they have the right to make these decisions? So he started a private members bill, which the NDP is against. And if we can't sway, like maybe a Green Party or maybe an NDP MLA, it won't go through. But basically what it is it's a private member's bill for your children, or if you're a caregiver of someone, that you can ask for a 4-day, a 15-day, or a 30-day intervention where the child has no choice. And this is so extremely important. Children are not developed in their brains at all. And then imagine them being addicted. How should they get, more say over what happens to them than their own mother? So I would really love if people could write their MLAs, call their MLAs, just ask. You can read about it if you agree with it. It's not a simple process. You still have to go to a judge and say my child's in crisis. That would be something that we could do action-wise around that to help our children. There's a question, how long does it take for a bill to be passed? I mean, there's not a specific time. They do 3 readings. And like Marina was talking about, Bill 36 is 600 pages. And they only read the first third. That's the only part they debated. And actually some of the worst parts are towards the end of the bill. So it can take most of these were passed in November of last year, very, very quickly. And always when people are busy with Christmas. And I don't remember what Marina said about how many bills they're planning to pass by October 23rd. 30? Thank you. So that's the answer to that one. Thanks. And then if there's no more questions, we are going to have, just a few minutes, a short while, if anyone actually wants to stand up and just express themselves, what they feel, things they're feeling that aren't specific, so that you have a voice too. How realistic is it for a community like ours to start an independent healthcare group with health professionals who have been, quote, fired for not taking the medication? Well, there is a group actually that's come to council, CBRD, private healthcare clinic right now. I can't remember the name of them. And I know they're going through a lot of insurance issues and a lot of other things like that. So I actually don't know the answer to how easy it is to do. The private clinics did not have an issue with you having to have your doctor having to have the vaccine. You just couldn't work in the hospitals. But now that Bill 36 came along, that is redundant anyway. So that's the only answer I have for that one. Sorry.
He was on benzos. Why was he on benzos? As a little, I don't know, they say it's a sedative, but I found out that benzos actually cause respiratory problems. And when you mix benzos with opiates, you have overdoses and you can kill people. So if it gets too fast, you might get seizures. Well, 3 days after getting off benzos, he 12 seizures. So MCFD came in, the doctors made a bunch of lies. They said I removed his breathing mask because he got COVID when he was 1 month old, and then they did a surgery on his heart, and then it went sour, and they wouldn't lower the pressures because they said he's not gaining weight. Well, the doctors, they have tunnel vision into thinking he must gain weight. So because of that, we're not lowering pressures, we're increasing the feeds, even though he has a cardiac condition. So MCFD got involved. They said I only can see him 2 times a week. I'm a dangerous father. And I told them this is crazy. And so I got a lawyer, and the lawyer told me to agree to the interim custody order. I'm like, I'm not agreeing to any custody order because it's all lies. So then the lawyer tells me 3 weeks later, after I made the decision to oppose it, the court date is 3 months down the line. So I'm like, well, how do we speed it up? He's like, agree to the interim custody order. Then we move to the protection hearing. I'm like, okay, as a father, I'm impatient. So I'm like, okay, let's agree. Let's get to the protection hearing. So I agreed to it, not knowing I lose complete rights over my son, all medical rights. And guess what happens when I lose all rights? They trach my son when he doesn't need a tracheostomy. And then they G-tubed him, and now they GJ-tubed him. And after that, I was just so sick and tired of them overfeeding him because my son's vomiting all the time, and they're always feeding him. And I put on Facebook, the doctors won't help. I'm just gonna turn off the feeding machine during my 2-hour visit because I'm sick of the abuse. Nobody's doing anything. So MCFD says I'm a dangerous father, and because of that, I can't see him for foster care now. So because of that, they said because of that, we're gonna get him caught up to date with the vaccinations too. I'm like, you're kidding me. You guys agreed that you're not gonna vaccinate him. So it's just been chaos. He's already been in the hospital for over 2 years now. Through that, I met another family, and this family, the boy, you know, it started off with a fentanyl patch. He has cancer. Craziness to say, oh, the son is in pain, he needs more drugs. The parent says, enough is enough. And the doctors call MCFD. And MCFD says, oh, it's comfort care, you have to give these drugs. And so the drug, at the end of the day, the child was drugged to death. Even though the hospital, the doctor said, you have the freedom of choice to do whatever treatments you want. So you know, when I hear about what fentanyl does, about benzodiazepines, it's a horror story out there. And now my situation, because of my involvement to advocate for this family, they are not gonna release my son to me right away. They're actually gonna delay, and they're looking for a foster home to put my son in. I'm a father of 3 healthy girls. I'm a veteran, and yet my freedoms are gone. I gotta wait for court. I don't know. This is just like, when I think about where has this country gone? You know, I was at first, I'm like, I'm so blessed to be in Canada. Our healthcare is free. You know, if I was in China, America, oh, I have to sell a lot of things in order to pay for healthcare. But this whole healthcare system, it's a bloody tyranny. And I hope doctors will become accountable one day. And as we share these stories, you know, like I told my friend, like, you know, it's money. A lot of money is involved. But when you share your story with people, everyone has a conscience. And even though they're sold their souls to money, sometimes if they hear how much you have cried, how much pain you have caused them, they might change and they might do what is right.
Yep. Amos is just going to give us a 30-second thing here. He says it's very important. Speak.
It is as
There you go.
I heard the system is broken. I'm afraid it's working very well. It just demonstrated it. Sorry. It's meant to be like that.
Yes.
Peter, Joseph, and I agreed. Read his book. It's all explained, the causes.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised. It's getting that way. If you bring me hope by saying it's broken, I'm trying to fixing it, and it'll lead nowhere. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. That was very succinct. So everybody is going to have an opinion on how things, if they're broken, if they're not broken, which direction things should go. But let's come back to one thing that is always going to take us somewhere. I'm going to give you a couple things. One is, just in summarizing some of the things that were said today, we've heard that doctors are leaving, nurses are leaving, healthcare professionals leaving. I have a friend from Victoria, wouldn't go get the vaccine. She went to Alberta after, I think she was the person living in the motorhome on the side of the road for about 8 months. People are leaving, and that's one way to deal with it. Yourself personally, this is your stake in the game here. But as we look at that, some of these bills are going to make the very same legislation that's making a mockery of our healthcare system, and it's coming on to the lawyers. And so what do you think the lawyers are going to do? Are they going to leave? Yeah. Why would they stay? So now we've had a gentleman tell us about this system that's happened to his family and how he's lost his son. Is he going to stay or is he going to go? There's so many questions we come to all the time. Down in California, they had a situation down there. It's supposed to be a very nice place. I've been there many times. And there was just an evacuation of people out of cities because it was terrible. They're going to anywhere but California. These are things that policies are going to do to ours. We can look around and see where they are. So the option to all that is to forming community. There's a lot of things that can destroy our community, but there's some things that can form community. And we need to start to get invested in that, because if we're going to stay here, then we need to start being active in every way possible to make sure that we see things that we don't want happening to stop happening. And it's going to mean that there's people going to do this thing. You may or may not have ever done it. It's called voting. And I know I never voted for most of my life. And since I retired, I've actually started to vote because I realized this is way too important. I really appreciate Adrienne and what she's doing. Some of the things she's researched and found out. People like Jen have gone and run for council because they realize something needs to be done. Well, we'll keep trying all those things, but there are things that need, you know, you may be on the other side where you really think that the fentanyl program is a good thing. One where you give it to them and keep it. We have testimony that says otherwise, so that we become active people in community. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just trying to summarize what we can do. So I want to thank Adriana and others for helping in making this possible, for Paul and Lynn who have come from Victoria to help as well, where we did it there. How many would like to see this type of thing happen again? Just two, okay. We would like to have counselors here. So this might mean that you would need to address counselors. We might have to have a letter campaign, a petition, something, so that the counselors will actually be accountable. I would really like that. I'm really happy if they completely disagree with everything we might have heard today, but at least we get to hear and they get to hear us. So these are things we can do as a community, start to build a network of people that will help get these counselors accountable. And that's the aim of what you've been doing this whole time. And I'm really pleased to see everybody here today that we can do something for this. Now, here's the last thing. See that clock? At 5:30, we have to have the chairs away and everybody out. If you can help, stack some chairs. The chairs go under here, or are the chairs going? Oh, and by the way, this wasn't free. Would you be able to donate? There's at the back before you go the doors, there is a place to donate. Savannah will wrestle you for your money.